Good job.
I have a horrible, yeah. Okay, we're live now and I'm recording it. So today's conversation I'm super excited about because I did do a poll in the Untying the Knots of Divorce Facebook group for women. And of course it's a new year. Health is on the brain, right? We all want to be healthy. And that's for some reason, that's just always top of mind when we start a new year, right? These New Year's resolutions. But you know, you and I both know that it's deeper than just the resolution, and it's more about what I want for this community and for all of us women here is to really get to the root of the issue, which is not about the diet, right? The next diet. And I think you and I combined have maybe 60 years worth of diet experience, which is mind blowing. And I'll share a little bit about my experience too, because you know we both kind of have a lot of the same background. But before we get started, can you just tell us who you are, a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Awesome. Thanks, Marisa, for having me in here with you. This is awesome. So yeah, I mean, in no particular order, but just a few things about me. I am located just outside of Toronto. I am Canadian, and I'm a mother. I have a 17-year-old, and my son just turned 16. And I have a huge, huge passion for movement, for health, for vitality. I have 30 years experience in the fitness industry. That was my identity for a very, very long time, still teaching group fitness. But it's back in 2016 where which we'll talk about today, that I had this big awakening in my life. And I'm now working as a food freedom and mindset coach, helping women with their relationships with food, with body image, self-acceptance and healing. And it's a little bit about me. I'm an online coach, so I'm blessed to be able to work all around the world. I love to speak as well on these topics. And I think what's most important is I love to dance. You and I both know I love to dance.
I love it. We might have to get some moves on here one time. Yeah.
Maybe, maybe. But yeah, just really, really happy to be here. I mean, being able to speak on these topics, sharing my story. You and I both connected through the sharing of our story. And it's through our stories that we bond and we connect with one another so that we realize that we're not alone in this world, and that there's people that either went through what we're going through, or they're currently going through what we've experienced. And we're, especially as women, like, we're not meant to hide and feel shame around all of this. So super happy to be here.
I love it. I love it. And so and I'm holding our book right now for those of the women that don't know. The book that both of us are co-authors is called Owning Your Choices. Your chapter, which is it's Hungry to Heal. Oh my God! Like just that title, Hungry to Heal, I so resonated deeply with that. And a lot of the women in here don't know that I myself have dealt with a lifetime worth of yo-yo dieting. I had a mom who was on every diet imaginable for as long as I could remember. And so in your story, I mean, I literally could have probably wrote this story myself. You talk about how you started your first diet at 12. I don't know the exact number of when I started my first diet, but it was early enough, like very early adolescence. And I just never knew what life was like without a diet. To me, diet was normal, right? That was my world. My mom dieted, and so I was sort of her little sidekick. And I thought that's just what women do. We diet, right? And so because of that mentality, it created this need for this control, right? We control through the diet, and then this need for binging, because then we go off a diet, right? And sort of this battle, this restriction, which I know you know a lot about, and I want you to sort of share what your experience was growing up with this.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the thing, and we're all different. So whoever's listening to this right now, I just want you to know that what you're experiencing, you're not experiencing it alone. And I promise you, there are thousands and thousands of women. I'm going to say women, and now this is definitely becoming more prominent in our men as well. It's just showing up a little differently. But yeah, like mine started. And I was speaking with my mom actually about this last night. She read my chapter just 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
And that's a whole nother conversation.
We're going to have this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It's a big blessing. She and I are both on our own journey. And I always say, because she, as you know in the book, I never said my mother. I said women around me. And she said to me, well, why didn't you say that it was me? Because I was one of those main prominent women in your life when you were a child. And first of all, it's not about pointing blame or at
Right.
anyone. But the fact is, we are all being subjected, as little girls, right from the age of 3, Marisa, little girls by the age of 3, current
Mhm.
stats right now are already recognizing that their bodies are different,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, and that they need to be changed. And that is just so sad. But we got subjected to it. I got subjected to it because I grew up in a house with a lot of dieting. In my book, I speak a lot about how I saw very low caloric intake days of
Mhm.
the food that my mother was consuming. I grew up with that. It was normal. Standing on scales, going to her weight loss clubs with her, all normal.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything was different about it. And I, my age of 12, who knows why? That's our age of puberty. That's our age where we start to look at boys and recognize how our bodies might be different from other people. And I immediately jumped on that dieting train. And you know, my dieting, my disordered eating, my eating disorder, it really changed and morphed continuously. In the earlier stages, I mean, the scale and I were, I want to say, best friends. We weren't best friends. We were by far best friends. But from the age of 12 until 41, I weighed myself every single day. And sometimes in my eating disorder days where I was binging and purging, I was easily getting on that scale 3, 4 times a day.
Wow.
So it started with restriction in those earlier days and tracking my weight and weighing my food and doing all of that. And of course, it works, Marisa. It works until it doesn't work.
Sure.
Biologically, our bodies will eventually want the food that they need to survive. Thank God our bodies do that for us. But then it swings us into binge mode.
Right.
And then we feel the guilt and the shame. And then we, do what we do in order to try and I know for me it was the scale. It was the numbers on the scale. I didn't just weigh myself. I recorded everything.
Mm.
I saved calendars and of where I recorded my weight. And then, of course, what ended up happening for me, and this is what I was saying to my mom, like she was one little piece of the puzzle for me.
Yeah.
But then I got into the fitness world and I got into the exercise world. I joined a gym when I was 14 years old, paid my money, became a member. 16 years old, became a fitness instructor.
Wow.
And now I'm in a culture that is very body focused,
Yeah.
very much about how you look, and especially in the earlier days. And now in my later years, it was more about how fit you were and all that. But you take my history, because I think down deep, there was just this piece of me that I wasn't enough. Like that's really what it comes down to. Is this for me? It showed up in dieting, and it showed up in body issues. For other people, it shows up in I don't mean to speak like this, but it'll show up in other forms of mental health and body hatred and the way we hurt our bodies. But for me, that's where I took it. And I struggled. I struggled a long time in secrecy. And I think there was parts of my life where when I was a new mom and the kids were little, and this is the thing about it. And I really want you and your listeners to pay attention to this because we can idolize people. We can look at their bodies. We can look at how great of a mom they are, and we can think that they have it all together and then judge ourselves. But I just want you to know that we never know the full truth because what I was doing in order to maintain my body size was insane. Tons and tons of exercise, especially once I'm working in it full time. And so the food issues then went into the exercise obsession.
Mm.
So the disordered eating patterns went into the exercise obsession. And then the exercise obsession then took me into the perfectionism and the comparison inside my work, inside my management, inside my profession. So it didn't just stop for me in the body. The self-acceptance, the not enough, it then went right into my field of work and then right into my marriage. My marriage was falling apart. My kids weren't getting the best of me. I'm so transparent about my story because I want us all to know that we're all just doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
But we have way too much pressure as women to be able to keep up with all of the badges of honor that we're supposed to wear so proudly, and we're supposed to do it with a smile on our face. It's exhausting.
Tell me what does that look like? You're saying that it started seeping into your relationship. What are the thoughts that are going in through your head while you're doing this, while you're sort of battling this disorder? Like how did this affect the relationship?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the disorder, but then also the overworking, like
Mm,
the workaholic
right.
type mindset. I was not, there was nothing left of me when I
Yeah.
came home. There was many times where I would sit in my driveway after I pulled in and I'm supposed to come into the house, and I could just barely get enough energy to be able to say, okay, on to the next thing. Because I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping. I mean, I'm fast tracking my story, but as you know, I mean, I wasn't sleeping anymore. I was dealing with body hives. I was dealing with chest pains. I mean, my whole life was falling apart. So when you're falling apart, but yet you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because you can't let a ball fall. Like you can't let the world know that there's something wrong with you, especially when you've built your entire identity as this person who seems to have it all together. And you're praised for it. Like you're praised for it. And so it was a lot of irritability, a lot of fighting, disrespect, speaking over my husband, interrupting him, not coming home all the time. A lot of stuff I haven't even shared with him because it doesn't even matter. But
Mm,
extending how long I was at work,
mm,
longer than I needed to be
right.
because I didn't have the energy to come home.
Mm,
Or at the same point in time when I was at work, that's where I kind of felt like I was good enough. So I needed to be in that culture and in that space. So it fed my ego and
mm,
validated me. But when I was at home, I felt like the whole world was falling apart. I
mm,
couldn't keep up with all the expectations and all of the responsibilities that I was trying to hold on to. And yeah, I mean, my husband was so patient with me,
mm,
Marisa. He was so patient. And he's the most patient, caring, kind man. And so he would just bite his tongue, bite his tongue. I think, he knew I was going through stuff, but eventually he started standing up for himself. And
mm.
that's where the fights would happen. And, you know, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah,
and so,
it sort of seeps into every area, right? I want you to kind of take me to the point where you eventually hit a wall, because I know myself, 30 years in the diet world, right? We sort of hit this point where we're just like, okay, what the hell am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I'm like, you're spinning and spinning and spinning right inside that wheel and you're getting nowhere. And like you, I know you've got to this realization where you're like, this isn't the answer. This isn't working. I can't keep doing this because it's literally going to kill me, right?
yeah,
And I want to sort of back up really quick and just give a little, a little bit of awareness on how we as women, again, I'm not trying to exclude men, but women,
sure.
what we were visually shown at that age when we were vulnerable. You're saying 3 years old, these girls are already starting to compare their bodies, right? We grew up in the 80s during a time where the super waif model was the thing to be, right? The magazine, the Vogue magazine, these were the images that we were comparing ourselves to, this unrealistic image. I have this number in my head, right? You're talking about you weighed yourself on the scale every day. I did too. And I had this number in my head that I thought I was supposed to attain to, and I wasn't going to be worthy until I reached this unrealistic number that was totally not even realistic for my body type.
Hmm.
But I wasn't going to stop until I got to this number. And it was this vicious cycle because this person was this number in this magazine, or my friend was this number, and I have to get to this number because I should look like that, right?
Yeah.
In my world, it got so bad that I literally would hide my body. I'm a full figured person. I'm Italian. I got a booty. Back in
Yeah.
the day, though, that wasn't, there were no Kardashians. So I wore a lot of loose clothing. I hid my body. I wouldn't wear shorts. Going to the beach with my friends, I have to wear a bathing suit. So like, that's not okay for me. And so
Hmm.
you get to this point where you're just like, this isn't okay. Like, this isn't normal. I'm trying to get to this unrealistic place that I'm never going to be able to attain to. And at what point do I say that's enough? Right. And I'm only going to love myself when I get to X number.
Mhm.
And so that was sort of like, and that's why I tell a lot of people, unfollow any of these accounts or people that make you feel bad about yourself. And that's okay. Don't be following the fitness model, this unrealistic version, and to try to attain to something that you're never going to maybe get to. Or if it makes you feel bad about yourself, really, follow, like
And
now
you know
we're
what? Like, yeah, like honestly, there's some people in my earlier stages, the people that I had to stop following, it wasn't like they were promoting
right,
bad things.
right. It's not
It's
about
just
them.
that
Yeah,
I was so triggered and
right,
vulnerable in those early days that I had to guard myself, you
right,
know? Like
right.
I mean, if I can just take a second, I mean, that's what happened to me. Like when my turning point, because it's not like I planned all of this. My life, I literally was at Thanksgiving with my mother and my family, and I was numb. I had no emotions left because that's what we do. We block out all of our emotions and we can't feel things anymore. And the world literally just crumbled in front of me.
Mm,
I just literally, like the tears that I had been holding on to for so many years,
mm,
they just started pouring out of me.
wow.
And it's at that point that I literally, I got home that night. I can remember this so clearly. I sent an email to my supervisor, and I said I need to take a leave of absence, and I didn't have a clue what I was going to do next, because I mean this was like the third or fourth time that I had hit this quote unquote rock bottom, which I now call something completely different. But I knew that I had to stop. I needed to stop. I needed to put my foot strong on those brakes. And I mean, it got worse, or quote unquote worse, before it got better, because I had to remove myself from every single place that was constantly making me question who I was
Mm,
and my enoughness.
right.
And we have to protect ourselves until we're able to know how to start putting the healing in process, and knowing who we're going to go to get that guidance. Because otherwise, and as you and I were saying before we went live here, diet culture, as much as things are improving, it's still loud and in your face everywhere.
Right.
So I still hear it constantly. I hear statements constantly. I have to go, yep, Kim, there's another statement of diet culture. I acknowledge it, I hear it, and I remind myself of my own path. So I don't know if we're ever, at least in our time here in the world, I hope for our children that things will start to make the shift, because that's why we need to be loud, and do the work that we're doing in this world to be able to help us all recognize that our beauty is unique to ourselves and our body is only one part of our beauty.
Wow. Yeah, I love that. Like you said, I don't think this is something you ever just heal from, because
Mhm.
it's so in our face. With me, I look at my daughter who's, almost 16, and maybe a year or so ago, she came to me and she's like, I think I need to go on a diet. And I was just like, I mean, I lost it. Like, it triggered me so bad because I was so good at sheltering my dieting and binging from her, because it was okay for me, but not for her. It's not okay. We won't do things again, like I always say, for ourselves, but for our children, we're like, no, we don't want that. We don't want this chaos for them. And so I had to be like, you know what? No, like, this is it. There's nothing wrong with trying to live a healthy, holistic lifestyle. That's not what we're talking about here. This is a mental, right? This sort of mental chaos where we're just not learning how to love ourselves. And I because the diet brain, the diet culture that I grew up with, and I want this community to know, because you might be asking, okay, what does this have to do with the divorce community? Why are we having this conversation? Because I had such deep wounds of lack and comparison, right? And this needing to control because I didn't want to feel this. And I had this, I was very aware of comparison, right? And because it played out in my body. That showed up for me in divorce. When I became divorced, now that the comparison still follows you, right? Oh, what is dad doing? Am I as good as dad? As like, sort of like looking all that and picking it apart and picking myself apart on what kind of mother I was. Because again, the diet brain, that sort of comparison is still going to follow you anywhere you go if you don't heal those deep shadow sides, right? Those wounds of how we got to this unconscious place. to where we believed we needed the diet or the 10-pound weight loss in order to feel worthy, right? um, that's going to follow you in every other relationship, right? And how did that sort of comparison follow you? Did it follow you elsewhere as well?
Well, I think just as I was saying, it came into my work, right? That's where it came into that space, prior to obviously what I'm doing now. But yeah, and it came into friendships, and it's like, who likes me, and does this person like me enough, and am I doing enough things for this person in order for them to like me? Like, I notice it, like, and I can reflect on it now. After you do enough healing, you're able to look at those shadow sides of yourself, and where your ego was needing to be stroked constantly, and we're able to do that work. But absolutely, it moved its way into so many places, which is why one of the biggest parts of my journey doing the work that I'm doing now, building a business, is making sure that I'm doing things in alignment with me, and not trying to do, especially with an online business in the social media world, is doing things that are in alignment with me and not trying to be somebody that I'm not,
Mm,
because I'm not
yeah.
doing that anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think for me, I had to tell myself, because I grew up in a very controlled sort of environment, right? This Italian culture where we needed to control our children, ourselves, and we stopped learning how to trust ourselves, right? And you and I have had this conversation where we think everybody knows better than us, and we sort of disconnect from ourselves and from our body, and we stop realizing that our bodies are so smart and so intelligent and know exactly what they need, right?
Mhm.
And we sort of create this perfectionistic lifestyle where we just, everything has to be a certain way, like you were saying, measuring things and weighing things, and what am I going to eat, at what time am I going to eat, and like the so much energy that goes into that. And
Mhm.
then you get into the binging side, right? Where you just, to me, I look at it as total abandonment. When I go into the binge and just totally lose all consciousness of reality, right? Because you're eating obscene amounts of calories because you've been restricting, and
Mhm.
in that moment you realize that there's no reasoning, it's totally unconscious.
Yep.
And that's where I have to walk myself through, of like, Marisa, don't abandon, this is a form of abandonment.
Mhm.
Like, you are literally abandoning yourself in this moment. And how do I become conscious of what I'm doing? I think we get so good at it, we go numb, right? And then, like you say, then the guilt and the shame and the self-loathing kicks in, and
Mhm.
it's sort of this vicious cycle, right?
Yeah.
So how do you help women who are in this place? Like, what would you say to that girl who's in this place right now? Like, what's the first thing they need to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing we have to recognize is, there's so many things I could go off here on. I think the first thing, from an intuitive eating standpoint, which is a term, if your listeners are not familiar with that term, is go look up intuitive eating. Our bodies do know what they need. They know when they're hungry. They know, and see, here's the other thing I want to say too. You're going to hear a lot about how we need to stop emotional eating. We need to stop. Food is only fuel. We need to stop. Food is pleasurable. It is supposed to be pleasurable. We need to stop trying to make it not pleasurable. The problem is that when we are disconnected, in chaos, in overwhelm, in our lives, being way too hard on ourselves, our stress levels rise if we're talking about stress eating. And then many of us use food to just sort of calm down, look for some immediate gratification, on some level. Or maybe you are lonely, like maybe this is a divorced community, right? Maybe you are a single parent now. There's no one in your life that you're sharing your life with, and you're lonely and you're sad, and you might be eating for those reasons. One of the biggest questions I always is to try and ask yourself when you're desiring to eat. So first of all, if you're hungry, it goes without saying you need to eat.
Right.
So if you're physically hungry, now the dieting world, and if you've dieted for a very long time, we literally turn off our body's cues. We don't know how to listen to our body's cues anymore to tell us when we're hungry, because we have done intermittent fasting. We have done these things that have pushed down our hunger signals. But the first thing we have to do is start to honor the hunger signals and give our bodies food when they need to eat. Now, the biggest thing too I want to say is we need to slow the heck down. I'm speaking quickly because I want to share, but to slow ourselves down. We are distracted. We are watching television. And I mean, I know single parents, it's hard. You're trying to do it all, but we do need to try and create some time to sit down with our food, even if it's just one meal a day. Even if it's just one meal a day where you're going to get up 10 to 15 minutes earlier and you're just going to sit down with your food, that's a perfect start right there. So addressing the hunger cues. But honestly, if we are eating for non-physical hunger needs, we are eating for emotional needs. Those tend to come on, those desires come on very quickly usually. Like physical hunger is a slow trickling, but if you have an immediate need to eat, it's usually an emotional hunger. And that's what we have to take a pause. We need to take a pause and take some slow breaths and ask our bodies really what they need.
Mm.
Because we think that the food is going to be the thing that's going to help us. But, and sometimes it does, but a lot of the time it doesn't. And then we're just left feeling the same crappy way afterwards. And we've just ate, a whole sleeve of cookies or something. Right? But we honestly just have to take some time and ask our bodies what we need. This, you and I, we've talked a lot about this in our other spaces, but self-care is huge. And I know that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I realize that we don't have the care and the support, but there has to be a way to learn how to create time for yourself. And this is not a one size fits all conversation. So it really depends on your unique situation, but you have to be able to find some time. I believe that we need to be honest with our children at the age appropriate level and learn how to speak about our feelings. It's when we push our feelings down and we don't recognize them, and we don't even recognize them ourselves, but we don't give them a voice. So it's important to be able to speak to our children and speak to our family members about how we're feeling about something, so that they too then are able to learn those skills as well, so that we can communicate and we can take care of each other and we can recognize what we need. um, that's one space.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I do want to say this. If you are listening to this right now and you are in not a very good place with your body and you're using a scale, I am not going to tell you to stop using the scale, but I'm going to ask you this. Does that scale make you feel better about yourself or make you feel worse about yourself? Do you wake up in the morning and feel pretty good and you get on that scale and all of a sudden you feel like crap and it completely changes your mood? These are the types of questions you have to ask yourself, because we are taught in this world that our bodies are not to be trusted. We are taught in this world that we need external things to control ourselves. And I promise you, when I gave up my scale, it is the best thing that I could ever have done for my own unique journey.
Mm.
And again, it's your journey, but I just promise you that you got to do what's right for you. And the more you're honest with yourself, and maybe you're like, I don't know how to give it up. I've been using it for 30 years. I get it. Marisa, and I get it. You might start slowly. I pulled away from it slowly. That's
Yeah.
what I did. I couldn't just go cold turkey with
Mm.
it. But those are just a few things. I mean, like I could go off like
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
I'm
No, I
gonna take
love
a
that.
pause.
I went cold turkey on the scale uh, when I had my youngest son. So I was 40 when I got pregnant with him. I'm 45 now. He's almost 5. That was when I was just like, okay, you know what? Enough's enough. When I realized that that scale had ownership over me, because I had divorced in order to gain my freedom back. And in order to gain my power back, I had set boundaries with my family in order to get my power back and to get my freedom back. And that the scale was like sort of the last lingering thing that dictated my mood. And so it, like you said, if you're going on the scale and you don't like the number you see and all of a sudden your whole day is ruined, then that scale has power and ownership over you. And you have to ask yourself, is your worthiness going to be determined by a number? Because that's fluctuates, right? But we have this sort of, these thoughts or beliefs in our head that if it doesn't say what we wanted to say, that we're not worthy. So I think that's super important, because it is, if that does control you, then it's sort of a light bulb moment of, okay, I need to address this. Like, this is not okay. Anything that has ownership over you like that, or that has the power to dictate your mood, is not okay. Like,
Yeah.
those are red flags.
Totally.
And what, so tell me what you do in your coaching. I think do you have a coaching program you just launched?
Yeah, well, I've got like I've obviously done one-on-one. I've got my
Yeah.
group coaching program starting in 2 weeks. I have a brand new one starting called Your Body, Your Choices, Your
Mm,
Journey, and
love
that will
that.
be an 8-week group coaching program. I'm working on absolutely food, relationship, and body, but it's my journey that I know other people are needing support with. It's this self-acceptance piece. It's the mindset. I want to dive into all of that and plant some seeds along the way near the end of the program. Because I'll tell you that you know this, like when we create space in our life to stop worrying about food and all of the energy that we like obsess about with food thoughts, when we create new space in our
Mm,
minds to dream and to be and exist, that's where life really starts to happen. So I just want to plant those seeds, and of course I've got my one-on-one coaching, and then I'll be developing some online stuff in this year.
I love it.
It's exciting, I and then I'm signed up for a speaking mastermind for the entire year. I want to get on some more stages when we physically can.
I know. I can't wait. I can't wait. Do you do any sort of, because I know you're huge on body movement as well.
Oh yeah, of
Is that
course.
going to be incorporated at all right now or?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
We do so
Because
many
I love watching your videos. I'm just like, she is feeling it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got also a membership community,
Yeah.
all different ways for people to work with me. It's called Empowered Movement,
Mm,
and in the Empowered Movement space, I am teaching live classes per month, and as well as there's like 70 plus classes
wow.
of previous classes.
Wow.
So what I've done is I've taken all of my passion for group fitness and personal training, brought it into this online space, but as well I've incorporated coaching
Mm,
into it. It's so much more than just a platform to move your body. It's a community, and that's been like a huge love for me. It's obviously an anti-diet culture. It is an inclusive space, no body shaming, which is so important because there's a lot of stuff on other platforms, and it might not support you
right.
and your journey. So yeah, lots
I
of things
love
I'm
that.
doing.
I love that. I mean, I love what you're doing. I love everything you're about. I love that you're teaching women how to just reconnect back to the body, right? That's our true nature, our birthright. We should be connected to our body, and we somewhere along the lines we lost sight of that and we lost trust. And it's really about what you're doing is really bringing women back to themselves and to trusting that. And because when you're in that place, like you said, you're not wasting energy on things that are not benefiting you, right? You're not giving your power away, you're not giving your time away, you're not counting calories, measuring things, dieting, going on a scale. I mean, I just add up all that time and energy that you're going to now put back to yourself and reconnecting to what really matters, which is you and not some number on the scale.
Yeah.
So I want to honor you in doing the work that you do. Thank you so much. You guys have to go in and read her chapter. It's beautiful. There's a lot of stuff in here that you didn't touch on that's in your chapter, and I so loved it and resonated with it. And just thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Marisa.
And then where can everyone find you? I'll go ahead and put the links, but do you have
Yeah.
a website?
Yep. KimBasler.com. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
And same thing, you'll find me on Facebook, Kim Basler, and my Instagram handle is Kim Basler _ food freedom.
Good for you. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thank you again, Kim. I really, really appreciate your time and this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all the work you're doing too.
Thank you so much. All right, ladies, you guys have a wonderful day. We will put the recording in the group as well. Okay.
Take
All
care,
right.
everyone.
Have a good one.